In the short term, focus on learning those steps. Eventually, you'll take enough of those steps that you'll have a path, and that path will lead you to what could be an exciting side hustle. There are always going to be issues, so you learn to deal with issues. So as those hurdles appear in front of you, you pause long enough to learn what you need to get over that hurdle, and you keep moving forward. Have you ever been asked to write a plan or a procedure in a detailed step that can be used by new people? It's actually harder to do than you might think. If you're a very experienced person who's been doing the thing, like selling on eBay, for a long time, we sometimes forget that the process can have many, many stumbling blocks. From getting started to making that first sale, there's an awful lot involved in it. On the one hand, you say it's simple. You find an object, you list an object, you sell and pack and ship an object. But the reality is, each of those levels, for the newcomer, for the less experienced, can have challenges. You can come smack into settings on software, the operation of your camera, deciding what to buy, how to ship. Those things all seem like big hurdles. And they can be if you let them. The thing to do is to get started. You will immediately, once you get started, find those obstacles. You'll run smack into them. I'm reminded of this a few months ago when I started this YouTube channel. Things I'd taken for granted, like how my phone makes digital images. I thought I had it down. Well, I learned quickly that to get it to do specific things meant I had to learn more about it. In some cases, I needed some equipment to get over my hurdles. In others, I needed to watch tutorials like on YouTube. Or in some cases, I chatted with my grandchildren and their friends because this is their life. They do this. Every one of those young people who was here that day had made videos and done posting. Floored me, but I guess I shouldn't have been surprised. So my point is, you got to get over that first hurdle of deciding to get started. Set up your eBay account or your Etsy account or whichever platform you've chose. If you're not sure which platform, talk to people who are already reselling. Watch some YouTube videos. But don't go down that rabbit hole so long that it keeps you from getting started. You can overthink this process too. So log in, follow the prompts, set up your account. Okay? If you run into a hurdle, specifically ask that question of some YouTube creators. Watch those videos. Read the instructions that are embedded, if they're there, on the application, on the platform you've chosen. And then it'll tell you you've got to do some billing stuff. You've got to set up some account to interface with so they can send you your money or take your money. Okay? I rely on Rose for that. She knows all the banking numbers. Banking numbers have never been my thing. So you just simply keep moving forward, and eventually you'll get your platform. And then you can start trying things out. If you use your own personal items to start, you don't have to go sourcing beyond your own, living room, your own apartment. But pick some items in different categories. Pick some that you're interested in. Only you don't need those anymore because you already have some knowledge. When you acquired those things, you gained some knowledge. Constantly search and learn. When you pick up that first item you're considering, first item sold on eBay was a broken pointer. Okay, so he probably just had it at hand. So the reason it got listed was because it was within his desk work area. But it entered history as the first item sold on the eBay platform. And it can be much the same for you. Because initially, don't be focused on profit. Don't be focused on some long-term future goal. Focus on the individual steps that will build to get you to that goal. So I'm not saying ignore your long-term goal, because the whole reason you're doing or considering the idea of reselling is to reach some goal. But I'm saying in the short term, focus on learning those steps. Eventually, you'll take enough of those steps that you'll have a path, and that path will lead you to what could be an exciting side hustle. PayPal isn't connected to eBay any longer, so you'll need some banking. You'll need some information. You'll have to learn a little bit about managed payments. You'll have to set up, how often you want the money sent. And you'll have to make early decisions, relatively early decisions about things like, should I have a store, or should I just list and be charged by eBay per listing? Well, if you really are starting that new, just let them charge you for the individual listings. It doesn't matter where you resell, you're going to pay some fees and you're going to have expenses. That's the flat out truth. Back in the days when I took my items to the flea market, or I took my items to a swap meet inside the county fairgrounds, I had to pay for booth. I had to pay fuel and other items to get my product to those stalls. I had to borrow or get some tables. So you're same way with a consignment store. I had to rent booth space. Auctions, you're paying the auction company. Sometimes you're paying them to come get it. Sometimes you're delivering it. But no matter how you sell, there are going to be expenses that knock down your profit. And you'll learn about what those are as you come to them. You'll learn about how they vary based on platform and the method of sale as you come to them. And sometimes, especially in the early stages, you will sell items at a loss. You will not have pre-known or known ahead of time what all those hidden charges are. But don't let that stop you. Businesses have a concept for that too. They call it loss leaders. At the door, they put something out cheap, they run a sale, they give you a coupon. They're not making any money on those items, or not making much. But they're to get you in the game, to get you through the door, and then they can sell you something they do make a profit on. So the concept of making some sales that lose you money while you're entering into the game, that's part of the business too. Don't worry about it. Pick some items that you are not so heavily emotionally involved in that when you find out you've sold that at a loss, or you've wasted your time, and it's not a waste because you're learning, but that you've expended your time but not made the profit, don't focus on that. That's the learning. You want to get a college education? You really better bring your checkbook. You want to get a reseller education? You're going to pay in equity, you're in sweat. You're going to lose some money here. You're going to have to buy things like printers. You're going to either, for instance, they'll tell you, oh, you can just print a sheet and take it to the post office, they'll scan it, and they'll print your label for you. I use curbside pickup. So I don't expend my time and money going to town to the post office. But I run into some other issues with that process. So there are always going to be issues. So you learn to deal with issues. So as those hurdles appear in front of you, you pause long enough to learn what you need to get over that hurdle, and you keep moving forward, because that's the story. And pretty soon, what was a problem 2 months ago, 3 months ago, what was a serious stumbling block in your path, as I learned that my phone wouldn't turn and give me an image that stayed in the direction the screen showed. That was a hurdle. All right. I had to take a day and learn. Transferring the memory, the videos from my phone to my laptop in a timely, consistent manner. Big hurdle. Cost me a couple of days, and I had to order something. Right? So I'm investing money to eventually make money. Well, not on YouTube. I don't really expect to make money on YouTube. But on eBay, it's the same way. At some point, maybe you're using whatever printer you've got at home. All right. It could be one that the cartridges, the ink cartridges, are fairly expensive. And everybody will advise you, oh, one of the first purchases I made was a good scale. One of the second purchases I made was a thermal printer. And there's some sound logic in those. And you have to begin to adjust your mind to the idea of thinking about cost versus benefit. If the only scale I have is my bathroom scale, and you have to get it out and stand on it and do the math, it's not going to be long before you start thinking about purchasing a small scale. And do a little bit of research, make a fairly good choice. If it turns out you made a bad choice, sell that first scale after you've bought the next scale. All right, progressively get better. Printers are the same way. Some people will tell you, oh, it's got to be a Rollo or it's got to be a Dymo. Well, it doesn't. A lot of other printers have entered the market that are very good and very economical. My 2 Rollo printers, it's not a plug for Rollo, but I happen to have 2 Rollo printers. When I decided that I wanted one inside for when we run our own auctions, and when I want one on my packing bench for when I ship for eBay, that was an efficiency question. Has the price of a Rollo come down to the point where I should buy a backup so that if my first one fails, because equipment does fail, I'm not dead in the water and back to printing on my laser printer or something, because those labels do get expensive in comparison. Okay, so you're going to run into stumbling blocks. You're going to run into hurdles. Some things are just going to confuse you, and they're not the same items that your neighbor would be confused by because he has different experiences. All right, so talk to your neighbors, talk to your people. You might be surprised. Somebody else may have the solution. The light bulb comes on and you're like, oh, that was so obvious. But it's not obvious until you actually know the solution. Reselling is one of those things that on the one hand, it's very simple. On the other hand, it has some complex subtleties. It's like how to price your item for sale. Well, there are a lot of research tools out there, but probably every week, I simply guess. I'll have something, probably came from an auction. There isn't another one like it. There's not enough data stored on places like WorthPoint. I don't know what it's sold for. It's been so long since an item like this sold, I don't have a clue. And I've been doing this nearly 30 years. So what do? Fall back on the idea of, I know what I paid for it. I know how long it takes me to list it. I know what it's going to cost to ship it. The missing element is, what will it sell for? So the simple solution is, make the number up. Invent the number. You become the person who is setting the standard for what does this item sell for. If it doesn't sell, you can always send offers to interested people who thought your price was too high, or you can lower the price. This is not set in stone. If you aren't moving your product at the price you found when you researched, consider lowering it, adjusting it, offering returns, offering faster shipping. Because those are all decisions you're going to have to make as you set up your account or your store. You know, how many days do I take to handle an item? Right? Can I ship an item the same day it sells? Well, that depends on your skill set and some other items like proximity to the post office or FedEx and what other services and techniques you need to learn. If you're not stocking enough shipping supplies and you have to go get those to do the shipping, you've lost some time. If you only go into town to the post office a couple times a week, all right, then you certainly don't want one-day shipping. But those are all decisions that are going to present themselves. They're all situations that are going to present themselves. And as they present, you make a decision. If your decision turns out to be less than perfect or really, really bad, make a new decision. Chalk up that loss of time or loss of funds to learning, and then get on with the business of reselling. Just like if I haven't, but if I went back and I watched my first or second YouTube video, I'm sure I would shake my head and go, what were you thinking? The pauses, the inexperience, the footage that goes astray, the way my mind drifts away from the point I'm trying to make and goes down a rabbit hole. So The point is, what is the point? The point is, if you're going to go down this reselling path, get on it. Go down it. If you don't like it, pick a new path. If you like it, but it's not your central focus, do it part-time. Start small. Get the pieces in place. Do the learning you need to do. And every so often, you may want to revisit it. I mentioned that my oldest account is over 20 years old. Well, it was actually started, I won't say by accident, it was started intentionally, but it wasn't for me to resell on. My eldest daughter, who lives out of the country, thought it was a way, and it was, for her to make purchases, to have them sent here, so that when she would come home for a visit, she could collect those items she couldn't have shipped to Mexico. She lives down in Mexico. Tourist industry drew her down there. That's all it did. It sat there for a while, just as her resource in my name. And then one day I found something in a storage unit, or bought it at an auction, and I said, I don't think I'm really going to be able to flip this locally, because I think it's a little too unique, or it has pretty good value, but not to the people in my sphere, my local sphere. And I said, well, I've got this eBay account. Maybe I'll just put this item up on eBay. I'll continue to try to sell it local. Nowadays they call that cross-posting. In those days we were using newspapers to sell, so there wasn't any online platforms like Craigslist or Facebook or anything like that. But it became obvious to me pretty quickly that if the item was small and mailable, but had pretty good value, and I didn't pay much for it, and it functioned, so there was likely no return going to happen, that item was better suited to a platform like eBay. And I entered the eBay business. Yay, me. That went along for a while, and eBay made some changes, especially in their shipping programs. It was early versions of having to enter data to get an estimate of shipping. Well, I had a sale go badly. It was for a bigger physical item, and eBay's numbers didn't come close to matching what it actually cost me to ship that item. And I had an angry buyer. You'll get those. The whole process of resolution frustrated me so much. I said, no, I'm done. I'm not selling on eBay anymore. Took down all my listings. Left the account open because the kid was using it, but I backed away. I had other avenues, local sources, local resources to sell my items. I didn't need eBay. And then time passed, and I ran into another eBay reseller. Happened to be the husband of the lady who ran the consignment store I was using. And he was an eBay guy. And he told me, he said, oh no, they've moved away from that. Now you've got options with your shipping. It's better than it was. And by paying attention to somebody who had a different experience than I did, I went back and I looked, and sure enough, I said, I think I can make this new eBay work. And I did. I've been doing it ever since. Expanding how I use eBay, the number of stores I have, what I sell on eBay, adding to my skills for shipping, different carriers, printing labels, different platforms, eBay, pirate ship, different sourcing. My sourcing has also migrated to the point where I'm happy now with online auctions. I wasn't when they first introduced them in my area. I was a brick and mortar, stand in the rain, die-hard auction goer. Point is, time changes things. So go back and revisit something you didn't like or didn't understand. If a platform just doesn't seem to work for you, look for another. And go back occasionally and look at the first platform and say, all right, now it might work. But those are all things you learn as you go. But the first thing you need to do is decide to do it. Just do it. Be like a Nike commercial. Just do it.